My name is Elena Vargas and I am 22 years old. I just graduated from university and I want to share a story with you about my home. Technically it was my mother's house until she passed away from intestinal cancer 4 years ago and left it to me. My mother was always an extremely organized person. Even before receiving her diagnosis, she made sure everything was in order. The house was completely hers without any debts because she bought it before meeting my father. Thankfully she did, because the house had an incredible view. She also made sure I knew about her will. "You will always have a home," she told me with a firm voice despite everything she was going through. Things were not always complicated. My parents were married for 10 years until my father decided to leave us for another woman. I was 9 years old when he packed his bags. There were no dramas, no custody battles, no arguments about property. He simply left. The only thing he accepted was to cover my university education. He created a special account and transferred all the money needed immediately. I suppose that was his version of child support. My father started a new family quite quickly. His wife Lucia had their daughter shortly after I turned 10. That girl was several years younger than me. Sometimes I visited them and stayed at their rented house, but I never felt fully comfortable. Lucia was always busy with my half-sister, either talking about her latest achievements or fixing her hair. My father was always working, saying he needed to support his family. It is curious how suddenly it no longer seemed like I was part of that family. "Elena, would you like to have dinner with us?" Lucia would ask, but her tone always made it clear she hoped I would say no. We kept things cordial, exchanging birthday cards, holiday greetings, and occasionally attending forced family dinners. It was all very polite and educated, but with that kind of discomfort that gives you goosebumps. My mother, on her part, earned very well as a senior accountant. So when she was diagnosed with cancer, she could dedicate herself completely to treatment. I was 14 when we received the news. She quit her job immediately to focus on fighting the disease. During the 4 years she had left, hospital visits and treatment sessions were constant. Mom never complained even once. She simply kept fighting, kept planning, and kept making sure I was okay. But cancer does not care about plans. I was 18 when she passed away, just a few weeks before I left for university in another state. The pain hit me hard and I could barely function. It was then that my father surprised me by stepping up. Lucia and my half-sister Sophia moved in temporarily to help me through the loss. I was too numb to question it at the time and too grateful for any support I could get. "We will help you get through this," my father said, putting his arm around my shoulders. Lucia nodded, trying to look understanding, while Sophia explored what was now my house. At the end of summer I faced a dilemma. University would start in a few weeks and I did not know what to do with my mother's house. I could not bear the idea of selling it, but leaving it empty for 4 years did not seem like a good option either. That is when my father came up with a proposal one morning during breakfast. "Elena," he said, pushing his coffee cup aside, "I have been thinking, what if we stay here? We will pay all the bills, maintain the house, and you will not have to worry about anything while you are at university." I looked at Lucia, who was making pancakes at the stove. She turned around and smiled at me. "It would be good for all of us," she added. "Sophia is already enrolled in the local school and the house would be well cared for." It made sense. During the 2 months they had been living with me, everything had gone surprisingly well. Lucia had stopped being so distant and Sophia had begun treating me like a real sister instead of a stranger who only appeared occasionally. So I accepted. I packed my mother's things, kept what I wanted, and moved the rest to the attic. Looking back, it seemed like the perfect solution. I left for university feeling secure in my decision. During the next 4 years I returned home during vacations and summer. The visits were pleasant. Lucia prepared big welcome dinners. "I made your favorite lasagna," she would say, as if she had always known my favorite dishes. Sophia would drag me to her room to show me her latest artwork or tell me school gossip. During Christmas vacations we decorated the tree with Sophia placing the star on top, while Lucia and I friendly argued whether tinsel was elegant or tacky. Then we sat down to drink hot chocolate, and sometimes I could almost forget this was not the family I grew up with. Summer was different. The visits were longer and more relaxed. Sophia and I spent afternoons by the community pool and I helped her with her summer reading. Lucia invited me to her book club meetings and we really had fun analyzing whatever romantic novel they had chosen that month. "Your sister is so good with Sophia," I heard Lucia tell my father one night. "It is nice having her home." Her words made me feel warm inside, as if we had truly become a real family. During semesters I called regularly. I had weekly chats with my father about my classes. I caught up with Lucia about house maintenance. "The roses you planted are blooming beautifully, Elena. And I had FaceTime sessions with Sophia, who always told me her high school adventures. Everything seemed perfect. We had built a strange but functional dynamic, a family built on the foundations of my mother's house. I never imagined everything could crumble so quickly. But I suppose that is what happens with houses. No matter how solid the foundations seem, you never know what is really happening behind the walls. Finally, at 22, with my degree in hand and a job ready in my hometown, I was ready to return home. I was ready to begin the next chapter of my life. I had already accepted a position at Elite Financial Group in my hometown. The interview had been via Zoom and they offered me the job immediately. Everything seemed to be falling into place perfectly. Or at least that is what I believed. The taxi dropped me off in front of my house on a sunny June afternoon. I stood there a moment contemplating the familiar view. Mom's rose bushes were in full bloom, though not exactly as she kept them. The lawn was perfectly trimmed and there were new curtains in the windows. Small changes that had happened while I was at university. I walked up the driveway carrying my suitcases, took out my keys with a smile, imagining myself already sleeping in my old room that night. But when I tried to open the door, something was wrong. The key would not turn. I tried again, thinking maybe I was tired from the trip, but no, the key definitely did not fit. What the hell? I muttered. After several attempts, I finally gave up and knocked on the door loudly. It was midday, so surely they were home, perhaps watching television. Lucia opened the door with her eyes wide with surprise. She wore an apron and had flour on her hands as if she had been baking. Elena, what are you doing here? I pushed my suitcase inside and noticed my father and Sophia in the living room. Both looked equally surprised to see me. Sophia was lying on the sofa with her phone while my father sitting in his favorite armchair, actually my mother's old armchair, was reading something on his tablet. What do you mean I live here? I responded, looking around. I noticed subtle changes in the living room decoration. Why did you change the locks? I asked, directing my gaze at my father. He touched his neck, a nervous gesture he had had all his life. Oh yes, I changed them last month for security. You know, there have been some robberies in the neighborhood. You could have told me. I replied, trying to keep the annoyance out of my voice. Or at least sent me a new key. I mean, this is my house. I felt my discomfort growing. We were not expecting you, Lucia said carefully, crossing her arms over her chest. She wiped the flour from her hands and seemed increasingly uncomfortable. I graduated last week. I told you I would come home to start my new job, I said, looking between them. Something was wrong with their reactions. Sophia had even put down her phone and watched us with a strange expression. Elena, my father interrupted, standing up suddenly. Can we talk in the office for a minute? I followed him to what used to be my mother's office, my office now, at least technically. The room still had my mother's diplomas on the wall and her collection of financial reference books on the shelves. My father closed the door behind us. I noticed his hands were trembling slightly as he turned to look at me. Listen, sweetheart, he began in a low voice. There is something you need to know. Lucia thinks this house belongs to me, my father said without looking me in the eyes. I stared at him without understanding. It was my house, he continued, still not looking at me. I gave it to your mother and you out of kindness after the divorce. And after your mother passed away, it came back to me. She thinks she has only been living here because I allowed it. I must have stood there open-mouthed looking at my father for a full minute before finding my voice again. My first instinct was to storm out of the office and tell Lucia everything. Now I understood her look of surprise when she opened the door. For her, I was just someone trying to sneak into her house. I have to tell her the truth, I said, moving toward the door. But my father grabbed my arm. Please, Elena, he pleaded, his voice barely above a whisper. Just give me a little time. I will find a new place for us, I promise. I just need to know how to tell her without destroying our marriage. Destroying your marriage? Yes, and what about what you were doing to me? He pulled out a set of keys from his pocket, holding them like a peace offering. These are for the new locks, he said. Please, sweetheart, just a few weeks. That is all I ask. Let me handle this my way. I took the keys, feeling sick to my stomach. Fine, I said finally, but this is crazy, Dad. You know that. I know, I promise, he replied. But things started going downhill immediately. During dinner that night, the atmosphere was full of tension. Lucia kept throwing glances at me from the other side of the table. All the warmth she had shown before had disappeared. The woman who used to bake my favorite cookies and invite me to her book club now acted as if I were a stranger who had wandered in from the street. The next morning I was making coffee when Lucia cornered me in the kitchen. She was still in her robe with messy hair, but her eyes were sharp and focused. Elena, she said, leaning on the counter. I think we need to talk about your plans. My plans? I responded. Yes. When do you plan to find your own place? Lucia asked casually as if talking about the weather. Now that you have a job, you should start thinking about moving out. You are an adult woman after all. I took a slow sip of coffee, counting to 10 in my head. Actually, I spoke with Dad about staying here for now. He is fine with it. Lucia's lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment I thought she would argue, but instead she simply turned and left the kitchen, leaving me alone with my coffee and a growing sense of dread. Over the next 2 weeks it was like living in a hostile environment. Lucia's attitude changed from cold to outright passive-aggressive. She accidentally washed my clothes with colors that bled, saying she forgot which basket was mine. She cooked family dinners but conveniently prepared only for 3 people and acted surprised when I approached the table. When I tried to watch television in the living room, she suddenly needed to vacuum right there. If I used the kitchen to make breakfast, she would burst in and start reorganizing the cabinets, muttering that some people never learn to keep things orderly. She even moved my mother's favorite vase from its place on the fireplace mantel to a shelf in the corner, claiming it did not match her new decoration. The worst part was hearing my half-sister follow her mother's example. The girl who just weeks ago sent me memes and called me for boy advice now rolled her eyes every time I entered a room and started calling me that girl when talking to her friends on the phone loud enough for me to hear. Despite the tension at home, my professional life was taking off. I went to Elite Financial Group, where they showed me my future workspace, a lovely desk in the corner with a view of the city centre. My future colleagues seemed kind and welcoming, especially Sarah from the risk assessment team, who offered to take me to lunch. 2 weeks later, during dinner, I shared my start date with the family, trying to maintain an appearance of normality. Lucia's fork clinked against her plate as she set it down with exaggerated care. Well, isn't that wonderful? Once you receive your first paycheck, you can start looking for your own apartment. I know some nice complexes around the city, very affordable for young professionals. I heard my father's silent pleas. I looked across the table and his eyes seemed to beg me to stay quiet to keep his peace a little longer. So I said nothing. To avoid the tension at home, I began reconnecting with old high school friends. Katie and Jessica were still in town, so we met for coffee or shopping, falling back into our old rhythms as if no time had passed. But coming home was always uncomfortable. I would enter and hear hushed conversations from the kitchen or living room that stopped abruptly when I appeared. My father and Lucia would separate like guilty teenagers. Papers were quickly shoved into drawers and fake smiles appeared on their faces. On Saturday morning, I woke up to an unusually silent house. There was no sound of weekend meal preparation in the kitchen, no music from Sophia's room at full volume, no parents watching sports on television. The silence felt strange, like the calm before a storm. I went downstairs in my pajamas, checking each room as I went. The kitchen was spotless, not just clean but unused since the night before. The living room was empty, with cushions perfectly placed on the sofa. Sophia's boots that usually cluttered the entrance had disappeared. Even my father's car was not in the driveway. I checked my phone, but there were no messages, no notes about where everyone had gone. My first thought was that maybe they had gone out for breakfast, but something did not feel right. They never went out for breakfast without leaving at least a note. Even during those tense weeks, they had maintained the basic courtesy. I tried calling my father first, but his phone went straight to voicemail. I tried a few more times with the same result. A knot began to form in my stomach. Finally, I called Lucia. She answered on the 4th ring just as I was about to hang up. What do you want? Her voice sounded sharp and hostile in a way I had never heard before. In the background, I could hear waves and what sounded like tropical music. I just wanted to know where everyone is, I said, surprised by her tone. I woke up and the house was empty. She laughed, an ugly, cruel sound that made my stomach tighten. Oh, we did not tell you. We are at a luxury resort, first-class flights in the Maldives. We did not mention it, frankly, because we did not want you to join us, and we hoped we would not have to pay for you either. Though you know nothing about paying for things. I could not help interrupting her. Lucia, you cannot. I am tired of this whole situation. She cut me off. You are nothing but a freeloader living in our house as if you own the place. Your father could tolerate it, but I am done. Do you know how embarrassing it is to have an adult woman living in our house, eating our food, using our utilities? My hands were shaking so much I could barely hold the phone. I sank into one of the kitchen chairs, my mother's chair, or at least it used to be. Suddenly my legs were too weak to hold me. Lucia, are you listening to me? I shouted. She growled, your father never loved you. You were just an obligation. He already wasted enough money on your university education. And now you are there in our house like an entitled princess. Well, I have had enough. Did you think you could live here forever enjoying yourself while we work hard to maintain this home? I could hear Sophia laughing in the background and my father's muffled voice saying something I could not understand. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. When we return, I want you to pack your things and get out of our house. Lucia continued, her voice dripping venom. If you are still there when we get back, I will throw you out myself, and believe me, I will not be nice about it. I do not care where you go live on the street, for all I care. You are no longer our problem. And do not bother trying to call your father. He agrees with me. He is too weak to tell you himself. We have already blocked your number. Have a good life, Elena. Oh wait, I really could not care less. The line went dead. I stayed in that kitchen for what seemed like hours. Fury slowly replaced the shock. They were living in my house, the house my mother had worked for and left to me, and they had the nerve to call me a freeloader and try to kick me out. Well, I was done playing along with my father's lies. I blocked their numbers on my phone. My hands were still shaking, but now with anger instead of pain. Then I began methodically going through the house, collecting their belongings: Lucia's expensive clothes, Sophia's school things, my father's golf clubs. Everything was in its place. I worked all Saturday filled with rage and bitter disappointment. By Sunday morning I had their lives packed and stacked in the garage. I found a 24-hour locksmith who could come immediately. He worked quickly, replacing the locks on all the doors. It cost a bit, but it was worth every cent. When he finished, I handed him my credit card, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction as I gripped the new keys. On Monday morning I started my new job at Elite Financial Group. For 2 weeks I focused on work, learning the ropes, making new friends, trying not to think about the confrontation I knew was coming. I stored their things in the garage but rearranged the house as my mother had it, removing every trace of Lucia's decoration. Then that Friday came. I pulled into the driveway after work and saw them standing there. My father looked nervous, Lucia with her face red with fury, and Sophia hanging back with a frown. They must have just returned from their vacation. Their suitcases were still in their rental car. Lucia started screaming before I even got out of my car. How dare you change our locks? How dare you lock us out of our own house? I walked calmly toward him to open the door. Lucia followed, still screaming. We are calling the police. This is trespassing. This is our house. I turned to look at them. Something inside me finally broke. No, Lucia, this is not your house. It never was. This house belongs to me. My mother bought it before she knew my father. She left it to me in her will. The only reason you have been living here is because I allowed it temporarily. Lucia laughed, but it was an uncertain sound. She looked at my father. Tell her she is lying. Tell her this is our house. My father did not look anyone in the eyes. He simply shrugged. She is telling the truth. The house has always been hers. I watched as the truth hit her. Lucia's face went from rage to calculation in seconds. Her behavior changed completely, as if someone had flipped a switch. Oh, Elena, darling, she said, forcing a laugh. You did not think I was serious on the phone, did you? I was just joking. You know how I am. All that sun and those tropical cocktails went to my head. Enough, I said in a low voice, but she continued. We are family, remember? All those good times we had, the book club meetings, the Christmas dinners. We can have that again. She took a step toward me with her arms extended as if to hug me. My father intervened, and his voice sounded heavy with emotion. Princess, I am so sorry. I know I handled all this wrong, but I love you. You are my daughter. Please, can we not fix this? I looked at him, really looked at him. My father left when I was 9 and paid for my education. But I missed my life, my home, my mother's legacy. What about Dad? The fact that you lied to your wife about owning my house, or the fact that you stood by while she planned to kick me out of it? Lucia turned to me with that smile. Elena, let us be reasonable. We can all live here together. We will pay rent. No, I said firmly. We cannot. Your things are in the garage. Take them and leave. That is when Lucia's mask broke again. Ungrateful bitch. After everything we have done for you, you would throw your own family out on the street. I felt strangely calm when I answered. You just spent $10,000 on a luxury vacation that you deliberately hid from me. I am pretty sure you can afford an apartment. Elena, please. My father tried again, reaching for my arm. I know I made a mistake, but... No, you did not just make a mistake. You lied for 4 years. You let your wife believe she owned my mother's house. You watched her try to redecorate, reorganize, erase every trace of Mom. And when she planned to kick me out, you said nothing. I was going to tell her the truth. He protested. After I left. After she finished making my house her home. I shook my head. I am done. Take your things and go. They walked to the door. I closed it, ignoring Lucia's screams about ingratitude and cruelty. Through the window I watched them load boxes from the garage into their rental car. Lucia was still screaming with her face red with fury. Sophia was crying. My father looked defeated. It took them 3 trips to take everything. While loading the last box, my father tried one more time to knock on the door. I did not open it. Finally they left as the sun was setting. The next day my father tried calling from a new number. Elena, please. He begged. We can fix this. No, Dad, I cannot, I responded. Lucia made it very clear how you really feel about me. A freeloader, an obligation, someone you never loved. Maybe those were her words, but your silence said it all. That was 2 months ago. I still live in my mother's house, my house. I have repainted the walls, planted new roses in the garden. It is mine again. Sometimes I think about them and wonder where they ended up, but mostly I think about Mom and how she made sure I would always have a home no matter what happened. My father still tries to call occasionally from different numbers. I no longer answer. Some bridges that were once burned should remain ashes. The curious thing is that now I am happier. My job is going well, I have made new friends, and for the first time since my mother died I feel at peace in this house. Sometimes healing means letting go of people, the lies and the fairy tale of the family you wanted to believe in. Thank you for listening to today's story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next story.